Hi guys, so it is after 11 o'clock at night. Yes, there's a banner here that says happy birthday. I have had it up here since September for my husband's birthday, and we've just never taken it down. We also still have our Christmas tree up, and it's the middle of February. Mind your business. Hi, Oscar. Apparently Oscar wants to be in this video this time too. You want to say hi to everybody? Say hi to the peoples? I am tomorrow morning going to be starting book 2 of the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin, The Obelisk Gate. If you are not familiar, I am currently hosting a read-along throughout the year of 2023 dedicated to reading all of N.K. Jemisin's work. And in January, we started the Broken Earth trilogy, which is one of her most popular trilogies and is her most awarded trilogy as far as I am aware, with all 3 books earning Hugo Awards, which are really prestigious ones. Like this one won the Hugo Award in 2017, the 5th season won it in 2016, and then The Stone Sky, which is book 3, earned it in 2018. So this is going to basically be a bit of a spoiler-filled vlog. So for those of you that have not read the 5th season, I highly suggest you do so before watching this video, because there are going to be things referenced in terms of what happens in the 5th season in this vlog, because this is the 2nd book in the series. Now, this also extends to those that are part of my read-along that have not read the book as of yet. Just be aware that I will be talking about some of the things that are going on in this book. So if you haven't read it as of yet, please do so before watching this video. The book itself is, I think, about as long as the 5th season was. So if we remove the appendix and everything else that's at the back of the book, this is actually shorter, surprisingly. This one doesn't even crest 400 pages. It's only 391. I could have swore that these books were much bigger than that. But again, like, there's appendices, and then there's like a whole like extras section. But that's pretty common for books from Orbit, because I know like the Witcher books too were at least republished in English through Orbit, and they tend to have a lot of extras at the back of those books in my Witcher books. If you're not familiar with this series, it is a fantasy series that essentially takes place in a world where in the first book you learn about 3 separate women who you find out at the end of the first book, the 5th season, that they're actually the same person in 3 different points of their life. And essentially you learn at the very beginning, though, that there is this impending like end of the world kind of thing going on, and something is at the core of it, and that something is this woman that we see in 3 separate pieces over the course of the 5th season. And you learn basically what it is for them to become what's called an origin, which essentially is a magic-wielding individual. In the live show for the 5th season, I talked a little bit about how that book really talked a lot about the different forms of oppression, and also in some ways how communities of people who are different from what is considered the normal, they are the ones that are usually sought after as the bad guys, which we've seen really in a ton of forms of media, especially when we're talking about like Black people or Indigenous people or other people of color. Yes, I know. Yes, other people of color as well. You don't have much color on you, but you're also a dog. I, though, will talk more about this tomorrow when I have some time, because it is very late and I do need to take Oscar outside. So tomorrow we'll talk a little bit about what the synopsis is and kind of the first thoughts I have going into book 2. Good morning, everyone. It is almost 8:45 in the morning, and I'm heading off to work today. So I have got through quite a bit of the Obelisk Gate at this point. I don't know exactly where I am. I think I'm on like chapter 8 or 9 though right now, and so far it's not bad. I just feel like at the first like quarter of it, there's not really a lot to talk about in terms of like plot developing. The most important thing, though, is that this is after everything that happens, obviously, in the first book, and we are still following Essen, who is trying to find her daughter, Nessun, who was kidnapped, well, maybe not so much kidnapped, by her father, Nessun's father, and Essen's husband, Jija. Now, this book is interesting, though, too, because it has more perspectives in it than the first book did. For instance, we get a perspective of Jija, we get perspective of Nasun, we get perspective of Shafa, who was the guardian that Essen had as a child, that went and grabbed her when she was still using the name Demaya, when she was basically being sent off to the Fulcrum for the first time, which is interesting. And essentially what we do know is that after what Alabaster did in the first book, which is basically start the ending of the world, the 5th season, there is this thing where he wants Essen to call the obelisks and essentially use them for some purpose. It's not 100% clear what that purpose is. Essen has really no idea what it means, has no idea of like what exactly is being expected of her, but Alabaster is like dead set on this is what she's doing. And essentially after he starts the end of the world, Alabaster gets really sick and like he's dying basically, and that's not good. Like there's so much that can go on. Now another thing too is that Lerna, who is a friend of Essen's from the community that she was in at the beginning of the story, that we kind of thought may have an eventual like romantic tie with, he's turning out to be a bit of a jerk. And basically, like, I understand why, like, because he does blame Essen for a lot of things that happened, because in some ways she did start this entire thing in terms of the end of the world, because essentially, like, what happened was that when she found her son killed, it sent this emotional shockwave that really started a lot of what the end of the world was going to be. And Lerna, I guess, lost his mother in all of that, which was a really big blow to him, and he blames Essen for that, which is understandable. However, the way that he treats her, like, especially when they are reunited since the beginning of the first book, when they're in the same community again, it's very animostic and almost for no reason. Now, Essen is still trying to figure out where her daughter is. They don't really know what's happened, but what we learn about Nasun is that what happened with her is when she found her brother dead and her dad basically like admitting that he did it, being so young at the age of 8, she kind of had a survivalist tactic play in where she decided to follow her father and lie to him about the fact that she's also kind of an Origin. But in the travels that she has with her father, she realizes that she wants to become what's called Lorist. And a Lorist is basically like, you know, in a lot of medieval stories or high fantasy stories, they're especially that are very European centric, there's always the traveling storyteller or something like that. That's basically what the Lorist is that they're like a traveling storyteller. They do fun things, especially for the kids. They are like basically entertainment in a sense. Now, essentially, being so young, Nasun is like, I want to do this. This seems like a safe thing, and it allows me to not have to stay in one place kind of thing. But she knows her father's not going to really be okay with that, because he wants her to be like an engineer of some kind. And he is still under the impression that Nasun is not an Origin, which is kind of terrifying because it makes me worry of what could happen that would then reveal Nasun as being an Origin, because I don't know why he wouldn't think she would not be one, because if he could find out so quickly that a 3-year-old boy had Origin capabilities, how could he not then make the assumption that his 8-year-old daughter could also have those same capabilities? I don't know whether he's lying to himself. I don't know whether or not he is terrified of taking another life, because what he did was in some ways a not accidental death, but he was so upset that he killed his son kind of thing, like I guess like a crime of passion in some way, I guess you could call it. But I wonder if part of why he's holding on to her is because he wants to make amends for the fact that he killed his son. I don't know, there's all kinds of things going on. Like, so I said earlier that there's not really much of a plot. There's not much of a continuing plot, but we have seen a lot of perspectives that have either filled in gaps in the story or essentially are hinting at what could become the more developed plot at this point. So that's kind of what I'm going with at this point. It's not bad. I just think I'm a little like confused as to what exactly we're getting into, which I knew going into this. I wasn't sure what was going to be the main point of it other than the obelisks having something to do with it and learning more about Essen and, you know, all this other stuff and what's all tying in together and how the end of the world comes about. So I am excited to see what happens further on. Hey guys, so it is, let's see, 7:41 on Thursday, February 23rd, and a couple days ago I actually finished the Obelisk Gate, and I haven't really had much time to sit down and finish this vlog. So basically this video is pretty late, and I'm going to try to get this out tonight, still Thursday, and I'm going to talk a little briefly about what this one in particular is, but I will reserve a lot of my thoughts on this for my live discussion, which will be in a couple weeks. It's going to be Saturday, March 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because I do want to make sure that I leave a lot of open room for discussion in terms of the book when it comes to the live show, but I'll give kind of my more cursory thoughts within this and go into depth about what the plot is. So in the Obelisk Gate, like I said before, we get a lot of new perspectives, one of which being Nasun, who is the daughter of Essen, who is our main character, the character that we see the most perspective of in this series. And Nasun had been basically kidnapped by her father, more or less. She went with him willingly, you find out in this, so it's not really so much kidnapping as it was she kind of, in order to protect herself, went along with what her father was doing because her father had killed her younger brother when he realized that her younger brother was an Origin. And in order to protect herself and her abilities, she decided to then follow along with her father to go to basically a place that he thinks will cure her of this thing. Now, this has a very, very interesting aspect of this world where there are people that are looking to quote unquote cure things that are not really curable. Think something similar to how LGBTQ people in the past had been sent to conversion camps to be cured of their gayness. It's very similar kind of feeling, and I believe that this is kind of the point, is to really exemplify how there are people in this world like Jija who believe that origins are something that are evil and that need to be handled. Now, in reality, where Nasun is taken is similar to essentially what Esun had done growing up, where she was basically sent to a school where she was learning how to use her powers. And in that time, Nasun basically finds out that she wants to become more of a lorist, where she wants to, be able to live free and live in a world where she is able to freely express herself and freely live as an origin without being, persecuted by that. Along in that time frame, she meets up with Shafa, who is the same guardian that had taken on Demaya, or Esun, essentially, when Esun was very, very young. So Shafa kind of sees now this daughter, this creation of a young girl that he had met so many years prior. And it kind of is an interesting look at exactly how very different both of these girls are in terms of the way that they grew up, in terms of the way that they see themselves as these powerful people. And on top of that, we learn that after the events of what happened in the 5th season, where Shafa is basically like attacked and he is thought to be possibly dead, he does at one point basically lose his memory, and it's not until something happens that he regains the memories of what he's done and who he is. Now, in terms of what is going on with Esun, Esun is now a part of a comm where there are multiple origins as she's still in the pursuit of finding her daughter. And in the 5th season, she meets up with Alabaster, who prior to, her growing up had been her lover, her husband, father of one of her children who had unfortunately died. And essentially, he, at the very end of the 5th season, is what causes the 5th season, or essentially the ending of the world. And he does this because he believes that Essun is going to then use her ability to change the course of time, change the course of this entire planet, and is going to do so by connecting with these things that are called the obelisks, and essentially bringing on a kind of power that is going to be greater than anything else anyone has ever seen thus far. And Essun throughout this book is really trying to figure out what that is and what exactly it is that Alabaster's planning, because as he's going through this, he is slowly dying and he's turning to stone, which is very hard to figure out how to remedy. And there's a lot of other things going on within all of that, as far as the community itself that she's a part of, and how they are ruling things, and how they are trying to basically build themselves up as an origin community. But within that community, there is a kind of racism against the different kinds of origin and the different kinds of people that are involved in this community. It paints a really interesting picture of this community in general, about the way in which some communities of people, despite being a marginalized community, for instance, may still find further ways to marginalize people within that already marginalized community. And I think that that's going to be an interesting exploration to dive further into in the live show discussion. But I will say that in terms of my thoughts on this, I did not enjoy this as much as the first one, which is not to say that I did not enjoy it. I did give this a 4 out of 5 stars, but I just feel that the overall building of the story didn't feel as impactful as the first one. I felt that, especially with Shafa's story, I almost could have done completely away with it. It didn't really seem to me in any particular way to be something that was super impactful, that really built on the story as much as maybe Nessun's story or Essun's. I feel like he kind of just was not really needed in a lot of ways. And so I think that that did bring down the story. I feel like that was really my biggest gripe with this. I feel that Shafa had a much bigger role to play, obviously, in the first one, because he is part of the storytelling of Essun as she is growing up. But so far in this, I don't really see much of a point to him, other than when he regains his memory, what kind of is going to be leading up to what will happen in the next book and the final book in this trilogy. So I think overall this just wasn't as strong as a story for me, but I am very excited to see how book 3 is going to turn out, which is the final book in the Broken Earth trilogy called The Stone Sky. Now, we will be reading that book in March for the N.K. Jemisin read-along, but the Obelisk Gates live show, like I said, will be on Saturday, March 4th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As of this video, I am still looking for a possible host to help me with talking through the book itself. So if you are interested and are joining in on the read-along and have read the Obelisk Gate, please feel free to reach out to me to host that with me, because I would love to get as many different people to help me host these live shows as possible. But at the very least, I would just love to be able to see you guys there to help discuss the story with me, see what you think about it. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. Again, if you would like to participate in the read-along of N.K. Jemisin's work, you are still more than welcome to. We will be wrapping up the Broken Earth trilogy in March, but then we will be starting up a new series of hers in April. So if you want to join in on that, please feel free to let me know. And I will also leave the schedule for this year's read-along in the description for you guys to make sure that you stay up to date with what exactly we are going to be reading over the course of the year. But if you guys did enjoy this video, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already and you'd like to be and would like to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye guys!